Hello, and welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming. Thank you for tuning into our Ornn guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Let's jump into it. Starting off with an overview, just so that you can know if this champion is worth you investing your time as well as shards into, we'll go over some of the basics or fundamentals of the champion. So first we have Forge. So Forge is the keyword that Ornn and his deck is built around. What that is that you give an ally 1/1 when you forge them, or you grant them permanent buff, but if they have an equipment, you then give the equipment that 1/1. So that way the unit that's equipped is still getting the same buff, but if they die, then that equipment is buffed up and you can give that to another ally, so you're not losing those stats. So next, obviously, it's an equipment-based deck. You want to be forging up your equipment, improving it, and buffing up your units with that forge effect. So next is ramp. So Ornn, it is a much slower deck. You're working on building up, forging up some very powerful equipment throughout the entire game, and then you're playing Ornn to have him finish it off. So if you like ramp playstyles, then this is definitely a deck for you. But if you want something a bit faster, this is definitely not a fast deck. So anti-synergy. I'm not going to touch on this too much in this guide video, but I will explain some of the effects later in game. But Ornn does have some annoying anti-synergy built into his kit. Probably worse than any other champion, unfortunately. I've done a whole video breaking this down. I'll link that down below if you're interested, but it is something you should be aware of if you're going to play Ornn. Next is defensive. So this somewhat ties in with your ramp. You're trying to stay alive, not lose too much Nexus health, while you work on executing your game plan. While that does take a while, you are needing to be on the defensive and being protecting your units. Next is one spell. So if you've been watching my theory crafting, you know that pretty much all decks in Path of Champions have 2 to 3 spells. Ornn only has one spell, and that spell is neither a offensive removal spell or a defensive combat trick. So you have none of those tools at your disposal to really help out your units in a fight. Your units just have their stats and effect, and that's really all you can do. So that is a bit of an issue for the deck, and you feel like you really don't have answers for many different situations. Alright, that's it for the overview though. Let's go hop in game and further explain all of these different aspects that we touched on here. In game now with Ornn, so we have him at level 21, 3 stars. Ornn is a 7 cost champion, so he's currently the most expensive champion in Path of Champions. Baseline, he is 4/4 and has tough. His play effect, equip me with an exact copy of an ally's equipment or the strongest equipment from hand, and then attack, forge me twice. So you're going to be trying to have a unit that has a nice large piece of equipment, and then Ornn is going to grab that, copy it, and use that to hopefully win the game. His level up is an ally has struck for 8+ damage. So again, you're hopefully going to be trying to get that taken care of before Ornn hits the board. So when he levels up, he goes to a 5/5, and now he gets attack, forge me twice, then summon a attacking Spirit of the Ram with my stats. So Ornn is going to summon this unit. This unit is going to have his stats, but then also Overwhelm. So this is going to help try to end the game, because you're going to have Ornn with a lot of stats, and then also the Ram with a lot of stats. And so works out pretty well, especially with that Overwhelm. This is ephemeral, so it is going to die after attacking. Ornn's champ spell, forge an ally and deal 1 to all units, then do it again. Fine, not really as standout as many of the other champion spells. So let's take a look at his star powers. So his 1 and 3 star is game start, summon an Ornn's Forge. The first time you forge each round, forge again. So his 1-star power is just this first one, summoning Ornn's Forge. And then the 3-star is the first time you forge each round, forge again. So once you hit that 3-star, you want to be trying to forge at least once each round. So Ornn's Forge is this landmark. So you are going to be down 1 board space because of this effect. And so what this does is it starts out on your board, and every round it makes a time and dedication. This is fleeting, and it still costs the 1 mana. So you're potentially going to be a bit mana starved, or you're going to try to get a mana power or spell power to reduce this cost, so you can use this more easily. Ornn's 2-star is the +1 starting mana. The first time you play an ally or equipment that costs 4 or more, manifest an equipment and reduce its cost by 2. So this is his way of generating more equipment. It is a little annoying that you actually have to play a 4 or higher unit or unit or equipment. This doesn't work with spells. So you're not going to be generating your first equipment until later in the game. So your first couple rounds of forging, it's just going to be buffing up an ally. So it's a little unfortunate, and we'll try to rectify that later with some different powers and effects. So taking a look at his starting deck, your 1-drop is Weaponsmith's Apprentice. You get that extra draw, and the first time you equip an ally, forge it. So you need this on the board, and then once you equip someone, it'll get forged automatically. But this only happens once. We have Favored Artisan. So this is a nice beefy unit. Can really help you with those early blocks. So pretty good. And then when they're summoned, they make a time and dedication. This one is not fleeting. You got Ruthless Raider, the 3/3 with that Giant's Belt, Overwhelm Tough. This is a good unit and cheap for you to be able to put a equipment on and buff it up. Really helps you try to end the game a bit earlier potentially with that Overwhelm, or at least get some early damage in. So this is just a good buff target. We have Adept Weaponsmith, play Forge an Ally, pretty simple. Decent stat line with that Dragon's Tooth. This is your 1 spell, Catalyst of Aeons. So you get an empty mana gem and heal your Nexus 3. So it gives you a bit of nice sustain, and then an extra mana gem so that you can try to speed up your ramp and get Ornn on the board a little faster. You have Warding Stones, or Weirding Stones, not sure how they want to pronounce that. I think it's Warding. Round start, get an extra mana gem. So this can help with your ramp. The one problem is this is a very low tempo play, and so often your opponent, if they're already ahead, they're just going to be able to kill this, or it's just not really helping you stay on top of your opponent. So it can help at times, but it can also be a bit of a detriment. We have Combat Cook. When I'm summoned, I improvise and forge me. Get that Savage Shield, which is nice. You don't get this until, I think, 21. This card... So if you remember from the star powers, you have to manifest an equipment once you play a 4-cost unit or an equipment. So your 2 most expensive cards here, other than Ornn, this is how you're able to manifest an equipment. It's a bit of an issue and part of the anti-synergy that your Combat Cook is already generating an equipment, as well as the Bone Club being equipment itself. So you don't get a piece of equipment until you already have a piece of equipment. So you go from having nothing to try to buff up with your Forge, and then you suddenly have 2 pieces of equipment that you have to choose who you want to actually buff up. So it can be a bit annoying. It'd be definitely nice if he just was able to start the game with a piece of equipment and you were able to buff it up with all your cheaper cards. But at the moment, it takes a little while for you to even get an equipment. Again, that's something you want to try to fix with either your support champions or powers or whatnot. but just something to be aware of. And then we have Ornn himself. So there are some good cards in here. Not necessarily the best. You might want to cut Warden Stones if it's a bit too slow for you. If you're able to generate other cheaper equipment, you also might want to cut out Bone Club or even Combat Cook. You really want to be able to hold the advantage in the early game and buff up your units and start forging right away. Otherwise, you might just get overwhelmed. So that's his starting deck. Let's take a look at Relics and what I think you should use for Ornn. So there's a lot of different good selections. Two that I'll touch on, Gale Force and Corrupted Star Fragment. So Gale Force, you're able to attack twice in a round. Now Ornn, you're trying to end the game the round he's played. So being able to attack twice with those big rams that he's summoning once he's leveled up, that can be very strong. Corrupted Star Fragment, you are, if you put Ornn all the way on the right side and you don't have 6 units attacking, then he's going to be supporting his ram that he summons. So he's just able to immediately eat that ram and essentially double his stats because the ram has his stats. But then he's also getting overwhelm from the ram. So you're able to attack. If that doesn't kill them, you have Gale Force to attack again, doubling your stats again. So he's able to do a massive amount of damage with this combo. Some other things to take effect. I probably wouldn't run Crown Guard. It can help, but it's a little too inconsistent with Ornn. Normally with Crown Guard, you want to be planning out your level up. Whereas with Ornn, he's probably already leveled by the time you play him. So you can still work with it with either attacking first and then playing Ornn to rally and get another attack in. Or playing him on the off turn. So it can definitely work, but I probably wouldn't choose this over other relics. Maybe if you were level 30 and you were using some other good ones with it, then it could work. Shade Leaf, if you want to give your ram elusive, either by itself, or give it elusive and have the Corrupted Star Fragment, so then Ornn is elusive. I don't think that's really the best play. I think Corrupted Star Fragment is just better. And if you're using both of these, I don't think you need to give Ornn elusive and overwhelm, because he's getting overwhelmed from the ram. And he should be big enough to just power through anything, so it doesn't matter if someone's blocking him. Because he has overwhelm, all that extra damage is going to hit the Nexus. So Shade Leaf can be fine if you just want to buff up the ram. I think using that with Star Fragment is a bit of a waste, personally. Riptide Battery. So it would be somewhat hard to trigger with Ornn, but he does have a very high cost. So you're going to be playing a ton of cannon barrages when you play him. I would say it's not ideal for Ornn because he isn't going to be able to trigger that plunder effect consistently to be able to get benefit from this, but I do think it could be pretty fun to play with. The Curator's Gatebreaker, this works very well with Ornn. Normally, he's having a bunch of stats, and this will affect generally after he is equipped with whatever equipment. So often you don't even need to attack. He will just be able to go on the board and immediately end the game. Against some of the harder opponents like Aurelian Soul or Gallia, that might not happen. One good thing about this, though, is if you haven't been able to level up, Ornn hitting the Nexus, should always have over 8 attack, and so he'll be able to level himself up if you haven't already. Can be pretty good. The Scourge's Stash can be helpful. Again, triggering that plunder effect isn't always going to be the easiest, but being able to get him out earlier can be pretty good. The one downside is if you don't have a equipment early, that you can be buffing up, then you probably only had like 1 or 2 rounds to buff up an equipment, and so the equipment he's going to copy isn't going to be that strong. That is one downside. Troll King's Crown, probably not the best. You want this to be on your units most of the game, whereas you're only going to be getting the benefit of this from the last round or two because of Ornn, and you already then are going to have a big ram with Overwhelm to end the game. So not as beneficial as is on most units. Wriggle's Lantern can work. Ornn is normally going to be able to get the full effect of this because he's just sitting in your hand waiting to be played for so long. So that's another way you can use him to try to end the game. For commons, I would say Banshee's Veil is actually quite nice. So since Ornn is your finisher, you don't want him taken off the board. So if you're playing against someone like Viego or Senna or something like that, you don't want to play him and then the enemy immediately just kills it with a single card. So Spell Shield to protect your unit that ends the game definitely can be pretty good. Also, I would go with the Star Child Staff can be pretty nice. So game start, heal your Nexus. This happens even if Ornn's not on the board. This just happens at the start of every game. As Ornn with a ramp deck, you're sometimes going to be a bit weaker early. People might be able to hit your Nexus, and you just need to survive until you can get Ornn out. So being able to have that extra sustain throughout the whole game can be very good to have. Alright, that's it for the in-game portion of Ornn. Let's now go look at what powers you might want to pick up, as well as the support champions that can really help Ornn and his early game. Taking a look at the first group of powers now. So on the left here we have the Craftsman Favor. Round start, create a fleeting time and dedication in hand. This is the same effect as your rank 1 star power. Now you don't always want to get this if you see it. Only get this if you're able to get an effect that helps you with your mana or costs of spells going down. Otherwise, you're just not going to have the mana to play this as well as the ones you're already generating. So something to be aware of. This is something that can be really good, give you some more forges, but at the same time, if you don't have the mana to be able to use this, then you might not want to pick it up. We have Gearing Up. Game start, summon 2 Armed Gearheads. Those Armed Gearheads are the 1 cost, 1/1 with Quick Attack and Augment. Augment, very good for Ornn. You're playing a created card every single round, generally, and so they're able to get buffed up very good. Having extra units on the board, more targets that you can immediately buff or equip can be very strong. We have Overprepared. Game start, create a random equipment in hand. It costs 2 less. This is amazing for Ornn. You always want to pick this up if you see it, or unless you have a support champion that's going to do the same thing, essentially. So Ornn, one of his issues is that he doesn't get an equipment until the mid-game, essentially. So being able to start the game, put this equipment on a unit, start it forging, start it getting buffed up, very good, very helpful, and helps mitigate one of the major issues with the Ornn deck. Next group of powers here. So this is all about being able to play your time and dedications every single round, and then also having extra mana to play any spells. So Spell Slinger, your spells cost 1 less. Wild Inspiration, your created cards cost 1 less. So these are both just trying to make it so your time and dedications are free every single round, and that way you can pick up the other power that we just talked about in the last group of powers that gives you another time and dedication. That's your Forge and Ally. So these are very helpful. Make sure you don't have to be losing mana every single round. Forging your units. Definitely nice to pick up one of these if you see them. And then Sorcery, round start, refill your spell mana. Does essentially the same thing, but gives you that extra mana to be able to use with any other spells you pick up, or your spell for giving you another mana gem and healing, your Catalyst of Aeons. All of these filling kind of the same role, but you definitely want to get one of these if possible during your matchup with Ornn. Last group of powers here, these are all defensively focused. So Enfeebling Strike, when you damage an enemy, reduce its power by the damage dealt. Very nice when you're dealing with tougher opponents. Hold it, stun the strongest enemy, round start, and hold them off, round start, frostbite the strongest enemy. Now, you don't want to get both of these together, because quite often what will happen is they will stun and frostbite the same unit, so you're not really getting that benefit. But both of these, or either of these, can be very nice for you just to get a bit more breathing room and not have to worry about the strongest threat on the board, because it's either going to be stunned or frostbitten, just helping you stall out your game until you can ramp up, get Ornn on the board, and finish off the enemy. I will also note, as far as endgame powers, if you can get either of the mana flow powers, so the legendary or epic, definitely get those if you see them. It's just giving you an extra mana gem, either at game start or every single round for the legendary. Very good, but they are a lot harder to come by. So I thought I would mention them here. Get them if you see them, but they are quite rare, so just be aware of that. All right, let's go take a look at support champions. Support champions for Ornn. Now this is actually very important, and probably more important than most other champions, because based on who you get, they can really help mitigate some of Ornn's weaknesses. So first we have equipment. If you get a support champion that has any equipment, especially any early equipment that costs like 2 or less, you probably want to grab them. Doesn't matter really who it is. If it's an equipment, you want it. Being able to start the game with a cheap equipment is really going to help you out. It's probably the most important thing when you're looking at the support champions available to you. So next we have defensive, a support champion that's able to help you defend your units, stall out the game. So whether that is someone that has some helpful combat tricks that will help you save your units, or just something like Frostbite to help stall out the game. So we have Jax. Jax and all of his units have Improvise. They generate an equipment, and they're all very cheap. Very, very good. I'd say Jax is probably one of the best champions for you to be able to get, since all of his units can generate equipment, whereas some support decks might have one equipment. Jax and his 3 units, each one can generate that equipment for you. Very strong, definitely helpful, and probably who you want to get if you see him available. Next we have Ashe. Ashe and her Frostbite, able to help you stall out the game a bit longer and just survive until your Ornn can come on the board and finish the game for you. So I have less support champions here, but that's more because you want to be focused definitely on equipment especially. And then Jax himself, very, very strong. Definitely who I would lean to if I saw them in the list of available champions. But that is it for support champions and the Ornn guide. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching that video all the way to the end. If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. We're putting out multiple videos every single day for Path of Champions content. So if that interests you, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and welcome to the channel. Have a great day.